So we have a beautiful Red Sea aquarium here. The salt level is sitting at about 1.024 and temperature of 25, so I'm very happy with that. And I think it's absolutely crucial for every aquarium is to have a flipper. So these things make glass cleaning so easy. And if you just regularly do the glass, you'll find it's really, really easy. If you don't do it for a while, you find it becomes really stubborn and suddenly it becomes a really, really hard job. Whereas done regularly, it's not a hard job, it's almost fun. I also think that any areas that you're not looking through, for example, that glass or that glass, I wouldn't bother to clean, because once it starts going coralline, this beautiful pinky color, it actually looks really nice. But it is important that any inlets for your power heads or your filters, you got to make sure they don't go all coralline. And your coralline should be growing quite quickly. And if it's not growing quickly, you need to know why. Also, your calcium and so forth should be dropping regularly. And if they're not, you need to know why. And if you want to learn why, you've got two best options. Number one is bring a sample of water and a video down to see us at the aquarium and let us go through it. Otherwise, sometimes the answer won't get recognized from standard tests. So in that case, it's really worth to send off an ICP test on a semi-regular basis. Even if it's once every few months, then what the ICP does is allow you to test all of the trace and minor elements that you normally don't have the ability to test. So it gives us a really good indication for the levels that we sort of don't know that we don't know. And it really helps to fine-tune the aquarium. And then once we've fine-tuned the aquarium and we've used the tank when it's healthy as a reference point, we're able to balance the aquarium surpassed our ability if we didn't consider ICP testing. Also with the flippers, it's really worth upsizing your flipper, because the upsized flipper has got a much stronger magnet on it. And a lot of these little bits of algae that at the moment I'm sort of going to and from, because this is a good size for this tank. But I do like upsizing because that way it's stronger, so it gets through the more stubborn algae quicker. Now these fish are actually looking very good. Some of them are tiny bit on the thin side, but I really would not want to see an overcompensation. It's really common for people to get news that their fish are a little bit skinny. Their next visit, you come and they're absolutely fat as hell. It's much better, if anything, to have underfed fish than overfed fish. But at the same time, we want to just have a very good understanding of what the fish should look like. And we want to make sure that they're not fat or thin. And we don't want to be too overly reactive, because it takes time. So if we slowly increase the food slightly, then in a month or two, maybe we expect them to put on a little bit more weight. If we slowly decrease the food slightly, then over a month or two, we expect them to lose a little bit of weight. Now, in reference to food, these guys are mainly getting fed on frozen food. I'm a big fan of frozen food and I would like that to continue. But as a main food, I am very biased towards Spectrum's probiotics. The reason why I like Spectrum's probiotics is it's got all the different nutrients that a fish could possibly need in it. And it's a cold extruded food, so it's not pressure cooked and processed like other types of pellets. My second, and the probiotic food has the probiotic bacteria in it, which means when the fish poo, the bacteria in the poo eats the poo. And I basically find that tanks that are fed predominantly on probiotics, I find that they're so much cleaner. I find that when I clean my sand, it's a lot cleaner. When I clean my filter socks or whatever, it's a lot cleaner. So I am a big fan of that. My second favorite food is Color Max from Danichi. And Danichi is a holistic, slow cooked food. And for sheer fish result, I've never seen fish look as good as I do when they're fed on Danichi. So if this was my tank, I would be feeding mostly Spectrum's probiotic. I would be wanting a bit of Danichi color in the diet at least once a week. And I like to give them some frozen too. So that's what I'd be feeding these fish. Now, as far as keeping the tank clean and waste is concerned, the other product that I am a big fan of is polytool. Now here we have a little bit of a suspicion of issues with an aerosol regarding potential cleaners. There are various things that you can spray around your tank that can cause your tank trouble and cause imbalances. Now, what polyfilter does is adsorb and absorb anything impure out of your water. So if something goes wrong, if a coral spawns, if a fish spawns, if a bit of overspray of some sort of spray goes into the aquarium, if there's something on your hands that shouldn't be on your hands, there's all these different things that can potentially get into the aquarium or be produced by the aquarium. For example, hydrogen sulfide, that's something that often builds up in fine sand, and that can slowly leach and cause you trouble. The polyfilter is just wonderful to be there, and it's like an insurance policy, basically. It goes in there, it adsorbs and absorbs anything impure out of your water, and then over a period of months, it will turn from white to whatever color to indicate what it's removing. And once it turns to black, it's done. Then I'd chuck it out, and then at some point I would consider using it again. There are also various products that I don't like using without polyfilter, such as phosphate removers. There are various phosphate removers that have residuals that I like to make sure I have polyfilter present to remove. This water, and overall, it's actually pretty good. We have basically no ammonia, we have basically no nitrite, we have a little bit of nitrate, we have a little bit of phosphate, we have about 8.4 pH, we have a KH of about 7, and we have a calcium of about 400. So there's a little bit of tweaking there to do. I'd like the nitrate and phosphate down a tiny bit, not terribly worried, but I'd also like the calcium up a tiny bit, not terribly worried. All in all, the water quality is quite good. Now, I would love to see the results of an ICP test, because that would give us some indication into the fine-tuning of the aquarium. So I'm going to recommend a Triton test gets sent away, and we can observe and respond to that. Now, this skimmer was cleaned on Friday, and today is Monday, so it's really only a few days later. And I was pretty amazed at the absolute sheer volume of the thickness of the crap that was built up around the neck of this skimmer. Now, that was because the skimmer is skimming a bit dry. And what I mean by a bit dry is that this tap was open a bit too much. So what's happening is it's skimming up, and then it will skim over, but then very quickly, fatty acids and various stuff build up around the neck, and bacteria that actually breaks the absorbate back down. So instead of the waste coming up and going over, it's coming up and getting broken down. And a lot of that residual is getting built up around the neck. Now, when you're cleaning a skimmer, all I really want you to do is lift the top up, get yourself a bottle brush or a nice little device to clean out the inside, and then as this builds up, then you can take it out and give it a proper clean. But you don't have to do that every time. All I really care about is that you just clean out the inside and then you're done. Now, if you clean out the inside and then after a day or two, you find that it's no longer skimming and you start to form that layer of bacteria and fatty acids, then what you can actually do is just close this valve off a little bit, and then that will allow you to skim a bit wetter. So I've actually just turned it now, so it's actually running wetter than it was before. And when a skimmer runs wet, it means that more's coming out. And basically, I want anything discolored to come out. And that's running it. You can run it super wet where even white comes out, but you know, that's a different strategy. Anything slightly colored, I want that coming out. And I don't want you to just wait for the darker colors to actually build up to actually come out. So I'd like this skimmer run a bit wetter. And the way we run it wetter is by closing that tap off a little bit. Now with these dosing pumps, these are absolutely wonderful. I love these ones. They're really good to use. So every time you're playing around with your tank, it's really good just to put it in manual mode and flush it through and make sure that you can see that it's actually working and see that it's flushed. It also makes sense that if you're going to get color-coded tubes, to make sure the color-coded tubes are on the right ones. So the idea is for the yellow one to correspond with the calcium and so forth. If you mix them up, it looks nice and pretty, but gets very confusing. Also, you need to make sure these bottles, every time you play with your tank, you need to check the bottle, because eventually the bottle's empty, and sure enough, they don't work if they're empty. So you've also got to make sure these bottles are not clapped. So the air needs to get in. So you need to sort of like undo it so the air can get in, or they suck in and they will not be effective. So testing and checking your dosing pump every single service is very, very important. The filter sock that goes into the inlet to the filter, the more often you clean it, the better. And you want to clean it once a week at least. But one thing you can do which really extends the time that is required to clean it is by chucking a bit of polyfilter in it. So I just throw a bit of polyfilter into here, and then when I do clean the filter sock, which in a perfect world is probably done at least once a week, but if you are going to drag it out, make sure you have polyfilter in it. And then when you go to give it a clean, pull out the polyfilter, give it a clean. You'll find that cleaning the polyfilter is almost a waste of time because it clings onto the particles very efficiently. Then you can just give the filter sock a bit of a clean, and you get the security of the polyfilter, and you also get the buffer of the polyfilter. So what I mean by buffer is that if suddenly you find you're not cleaning it out like you should, you'll find that the clinging of the particles done by the polyfilter is actually quite extraordinary. And it's amazing how long you can go without cleaning your filter sock when there's polyfilter. One thing to do every now and then is to fill your sump up with water from the tank and then start the siphon. Often, if you don't have enough water in the sump, the siphon doesn't work. So you need to drain a bit of water out of the tank so you can get a bit of siphon going. And then, on a semi-regular basis, it's good to get your little siphon and give your sump a sucky. And sometimes you'd be surprised how much crap you can get out of your sump. This one's actually not too bad. But just putting this in your little cleaning routine every now and then, all these little things make a difference. Because all these sorts of sediment sinks is what's going to build up your phosphate, nitrate, and other things that you're not so interested in. So that little thing there can make a difference over time.